Moving Iron Podcast is proud to be part of the Global Ag Network. The network is going live soon, so check out globalagnetwork.com for more details and updates. Now on to the show.
Moving iron in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving iron time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here. Moving iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast Market Rundown with Chip Nellinger. I'm your host, Casey Seymour, now part of the Global Ag Network. Chip, how you doing?
Hey, trying to stay warm here. We're ready for spring any day now.
It's a full-time job this year. That warmth is lacking about everywhere we go.
We got a big goose egg on the thermometer this morning, so it's not what you want to see in March.
Yeah, you're 4 degrees better than me, so things are balmy where you're at.
Balmy, yeah.
All right, so some news came out yesterday. Wall Street Journal had a report that came out that said the U.S. and China were within just a few days of making something happen and basically alleviating all the tariffs on both sides, also any sanctions that might be out there between the U.S. and China, mostly that the U.S. is laid on China. So big news coming out of there. The markets have responded both yesterday and also in the open this morning. I looked and saw that they kind of had a rally from what they had up yesterday. So what are your thoughts on that? And do you think this is another one of those report too early that maybe something's going to come out and say, hey, you know what, we're actually further away than we thought?
Yeah, that's, I think, not that I'm totally pessimistic on this, but that is at least the fourth, if not the fifth time the Wall Street Journal has reported that. Same headline, U.S.-China close to a deal here. I do think that we're close, but the market's worn out. It's just been almost laughable at times how this thing's gone, and the market's just sick of it. And everyone else that are, part of these markets, it's just exhausting day in, day out. We've got a deal. We're miles apart on a deal. You got one trade rep that, says one thing in the morning. You've got another one that says something 180 degrees different in the afternoon. It's mind-boggling and it's mind-numbing. So I think until there is, ink on the paper and we've got, somebody takes a picture and tweets it out of the actual specifics, that this market is going to be a little bit reserved and say, okay, we've seen this play out before, and then it resulted in a big nothing burger, and let's wait and see. So it's good news. Now, there was, I think very early this morning, Goldman Sachs, or possibly over the weekend, Goldman Sachs put out some news as well to their clients that, this thing's probably very close. It's going to include ethanol. It's going to include a lot of energy products, possibly some natural gas. So, this thing is, some details are leaking out, and, I think that we are close. But until you have some actual hard specifics, hard facts, this market's probably going to be a little bit reserved. It's not going to go a lot lower with that news, but, that's still... I think the date that I heard, which will probably change 52 to 75 times between now and then, was the 27th of March, that they're supposed to, the two presidents are supposed to get together and have this historic signing. So we'll see. That's still a ways away. That's 3.5 weeks away here. So a lot can change between now and then. And in market terms, that's a long ways away. So I don't know. I mean, it's good. It's good news. But I don't think the market's going to do a whole lot with it until we get some more specifics.
Right, and that's the same thing that I read in the articles that I were talking about, where the 27th was going to be the day they were going to get together and talk about, sign whatever they're going to sign, or with at least have an agreement in place by then, maybe not signed in place. But the other thing that's standing out there now that I have a lot of concern about is the wheat price, and it is not rebounded at all, especially when you look at what's happening in Australia. What's the underlying issue with wheat right now? I mean, I know supplies are high and everything else, but one of the largest wheat producing nations in the world is basically burned up in drought. So I mean, What's your opinion of wheat and where do you see it headed?
Yeah, that's a really tough call there. I think this Russian situation has everybody scratching their heads because they don't know. You've got European cash wheat prices that have recently been, and Russian wheat prices have been multi-year highs, but yet, which would indicate there's some sort of shortage domestically, but yet Russia continues to export wheat. So it's a little bit of a head scratcher with what's going on, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense. It's got the market confused. The funds, I think, just, they don't debate or, agonize over the news like, it seems like we talk about daily on China. Will they, won't they? Is it a deal? What are they going to take? The funds are a little less emotional. And if their system says sell, they're going to sell. And their system has been flashing sell in wheat for quite a while. So these funds have built up a big short position in really all our markets, wheat and corn especially, to a lesser extent beans. So I think that's really been what this is about, is the funds are selling it. We still have too high of stocks domestically. We're not going to run out. There's problems that have popped up the last several months in the world. As you mentioned, Australia is right in smack dab in the middle of a problem right now. But the market just is not responding. And sometimes it just takes time, and it wears everyone out. I think you're in the process of that. Wheat's dropped about 60 cents roughly in the last 3 weeks. It's ugly. It's oversold, but we just need a spark. And now we're set, right? The funds have big short positions put out. I think it's estimated that the funds are short probably 80-ish.
Sorry about that. About 80,000 contracts.
Wheat. The funds are short. They're short probably 150,000 contracts of corn. We just need the right spark now. And it's not the right timing in the corn market to be short, the first week in March with the whole growing season ahead of us. And, throwing going a 180 on you here, as I mentioned, what is this, March 4th? It was about 4 or 5 below this morning for a low here in Central Illinois. We had some snow. Looking out the parking lot, there's a skip of snow here, 0 degrees right now. More snow coming later this week. I mean, right here, Central Illinois is not even the worst of it. I mean, this is everywhere. Flooding in Southern Illinois, flooding in Kentucky, Tennessee. They got some snow cover out west, but I don't know. A long answer, much longer. I don't know what's going on at the wheat market. The funds decided that they want a big short position, and that's what's going to drive it for now. But there are some fundamentals, and we've got a very important, 3 or 4 months ahead of us here. I mean, how are we going to come out of dormancy? Did we have any winter kill issues? It's been brutally cold, several stretches, brutally cold, and then warm up, and then brutally cold again. It's not good for wheat. So we got a lot of questions out there still with these markets, and the funds are short, and we've got the setup. We just need some sort of a spark. That could be weather. It could be China. It could be some export demand. It could be a lot of things. We just need some things to start going right in these markets, and probably primarily get this China thing in the rearview mirror. It's just it's not a I guess freely traded market right now until we get that decided, and we need that behind us and not weighing on us daily.
So what will have a bigger impact on U.S. corn if China buys corn or if China buys ethanol? More ethanol. Which one's going to be the biggest impact on corn?
Yeah, I think if they buy corn, I mean, it's been several years, many years. It probably is the last time they bought sizable amounts of corn was, I believe, 95, 96. So you're talking a while ago. They will both have an effect, and I think it's probably going to be both. It's not going to be one or the other. It's going to be a combination of both, corn, ethanol, possibly DDGs. So I just don't think that the market doesn't seem like it's even considering that as a possibility right now. We don't have, even though we had a big crop, our demand's big, we don't have just burdensome stocks of corn sitting here. And, you start combining some better ethanol demand, if they start taking ethanols and DDGs, that'll help ethanol margins right there because you tighten up that DDG market, bring some margins back to our domestic ethanol producers. You start pumping some corn to them. You know, 10 million tons, metric tons seems to be their working order. That's over 300 million bushels of corn. So, you know, we sell them 10 million metric tons of corn, even if half of it's, the 18 crop year, that's going to tighten out the carry out that much more. You include ethanol and DDG in that. It's a different story. It's a game changer. But the market right now, I think, is just so weary of taking a position, getting long, expecting the market's going to go up on good news, and then they get the rug pulled out from under them with bad news, that they're going to just wait and see. But I think that is something, you maybe hit the nail on the head. We're pretty lethargic. We're not acting right. That's not a friendly sign, but a snap of a finger, a tweet, or a signed agreement could change that overnight, and put a much bigger rally in than people expect because the funds have a big short position right now.
Right on. All right, so livestock market, it's like we just talked about. It's been cold, really cold. Out here in Nebraska and Western Panhandle, we had about, and depending on when you're at, it could have been 5 inches to a foot, depending on where you were at, and cold, windy, cold, really cold conditions. Guys are calving. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in the cattle market. So with the cold weather and trying to put on gain and everything else that goes with that, it's got to be a struggle right now on the cattle market, and it's got to start to show a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely starting to show. It's been brutal. It's just been possibly one of the worst winters for feeding cattle in modern history, and it's not over yet, as you mentioned. Now the next problem is going to be how do we come into spring, right? It's going to get sloppy wet, and when everything thaws out, that's almost as bad as these brutal cold temperatures. If you have cold temperatures for an extended period, it's livable, but you have these bouts of blizzard conditions, and then you warm up and cool down and warm up, cool down. That's what's a killer. As far as feed conversion, carcass weights are lower. The cattle market definitely, that's affecting it right now. There's no question. We recently set contract highs in a lot of these markets last week in live cattle. The feeder fat spread is as narrow as it's been in a long, long time. So what that means is that, number one, feedlots aren't buying feeder cattle because of the feeding conditions. But more importantly, in any feeder cattle that they are buying, there's a good chance that, if you got some profitability out there or close to it in the deferreds, and that's not a real common occurrence. So profitability-wise, things are going all right. Feed costs, cost to gain is going up because of the weather, but yet the cash market continues to respond. It just seems like for a month now it's been up $1 to $2, and it was again last week. So we're seeing the effects of that. Where does it stop? I don't know. It probably could mean that we have one final push higher, maybe kind of a blow off type of a top where maybe you could take this April contract, mid to upper 130s, just shy of 140. Wouldn't surprise me at all. The June live cattle contract's way behind the April, so it has some catch up to do. But, from a producer standpoint, you got to know the numbers, increase your cost of gain because of the horrendous feeding conditions. And when you've got profitability, lots of tools out there, whether it's puts, whether it's selling futures and attaching some calls to it so that you can capture some upside. It's not the time to get, uber bullish in here, perma bull, and think we're going to go up forever, because we won't.
Right. Well, we talk about it every time we do this, Chip. Planning is how important that is, and being able to execute that plan when you have it laid out to execute it. So if folks have a plan they're working on or need some help getting one planned, getting a plan put together, how to do that, Chip?
Yeah, best way is just call our office, 309-550-7213. And we'd love to chat with you on what you're doing, kind of give you a quick overview. There might be a couple little things that we could help you with to tweak that. And execution's the hard part. It's one thing to have a plan. but you got to be ready, willing, and able to pull the trigger when it's time. So that's the real hard part of it.
Right on. All right, Chip. Wait, we'll have a good rest of your week. We'll talk to you again next week, and see if you can't put another layer on. Stay warm.
Well, we'll try it. Spring will come eventually. I was just telling somebody earlier, it'll go from 5 below to like 87 in 4 days, and you'd be like, oh, man, I'm not ready for this crap.
Skip spring, go right to summer, right?
Exactly. I'm ready for spring. I'd like about 3 or 4 weeks of a nice easing into it, and instead of going from 5 below to 80 above, you know?
I hear you. I can hear you, man. So, all right, Chip, take care of yourself. We'll hit
all right.
Buddy.
Have a good week.
Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Moving Iron Podcast. Remember, if you want to continue any of these conversations, you can hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Moving Iron LLC. You can also send me an email at movingironpodcast@movingironpodcast.com. You can also visit the Moving Iron Podcast YouTube channel. Here you can find Morning Market Roundup with Chip Nellinger and Angie Setzer. Also, Tax Moves with Glenn Birnbaum. Moving Iron Podcast is proud to be part of the Global Ag Network. The network is going live soon, so check out globalagnetwork.com for more details and updates. You'll be able to hear Dryline Farmer Podcast, Girls Talk Ag, the Topsoil Podcast, Ag News Daily, Working Cows, Heifer Please, Throwback Iron, and Ask Agnes. Please visit movingironllc.com. Here you can find information, details, and updates for the 2019 Moving Iron Summit in Nashville, Tennessee. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can leave a review and subscribe at your favorite podcasting platform. And you can find this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, and SoundCloud. So until next time, let's go move some iron. This is Casey Seymour. Out.
Moving iron in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving iron time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here. Moving on.